All right. Well, first off, I want to thank you guys for inviting me out to talk to your community here. Just like what Saul was saying, I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of different people in the community. Who I never imagined saying this whenever I started the company, but there's a lot of ex-poets floating out there as we've grown, and it's been fun to watch as the company's gotten older and as that's happened, to see people who started there, where they've gone, and then see them lead whole new communities. That's been really exciting. And I think we knew you. It's been how many years? It's been 4 years. It was like six. Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, we're getting old, dude. Cool. So to give you guys a quick background. I'm gonna tell you guys just a little bit about Poetic and my background, so you guys understand why you should pay attention to me and why you should trust me that Meteor might be a good idea. So I've been programming for about 20 years, and I'm 28 years old. I started Poetic after working at an energy company. When I was about 19, I had that job, and I just decided if I have to put on a suit and tie and work in a cubicle one more day, I'm going to use that tie to hang myself. There's got to be fun places to work in Houston. So I opted to just work in my underwear from the house, but over time that sort of grew into a company. We now have around about 30 developers. Our team is about 40 people. And so we have a lot of struggles that I feel like you don't have whenever you have just a couple people on a team, or whenever you're working on a team that has only senior level talent on it. Because again, we worked with Saul at the beginning of his career. We work with a lot of people at the beginning of their career. In fact, we hire a lot of people out of the iron yard, and we've become really used to being a lot of programmers' first job. That kind of has a lot to do with the fact that so I actually have been programming, dropped out of high school to start programming. And I've always felt like this is something that should be easy, should be something that people should be able to teach themselves. I feel like it's something that if you did go to college, or if you didn't, you're in a career that you hate, that you should. This is something that you can Google at night, figure out how to do it, make money, have fun. And I know that because half people at Poetic would claim that as well, and that's also how I got into this. I will say, however, there was a time where I felt like programming was getting easier, and that's like as Ruby on Rails. I was one of the people that saw Rails 1 and had my mind blown by Build Your Blog. I mean, how many people in here saw the Build the Blog in 5 minutes thing and then had their mind blown? Cool. Well, it hasn't been repeated since. Yeah, 15 minutes. Sorry.
I have one I can show you.
Okay.
It's not Rails, it's Phoenix, but it's better.
Cool. So, yeah, 5 minutes. Well, I feel like programming really sort of like reached its pinnacle around Rails 2 or Rails 3, as far as frameworks that had great testing, frameworks that had good opinions, and so on and so forth. And although I really like Node, and all the apps we've been building over the past year are all built in that, I feel like it has increased the layers of complexity tenfold and has created such a high barrier to entry. It's very hard for new programmers to break into the industry, which is why it's great that you guys have this meetup going on to teach each other. But even like what Saul was showing, and when we've used Happy, it's very hard as a new developer to look at that and be able to understand it and digest that. So we started using a lot of Node, but we had to figure out how can we lower the barrier to entry and lower the complexity so we can continue to hire people at the beginning of their career, give them their break into the industry, because that's something that we're very passionate about Poetic. We want to be able to keep doing in the future. So that's whenever we came across Meteor. It had all the Node underpinnings that we liked. In fact, in the next release of Meteor in 1.3, it will be 100% based on NPM. It won't have its whole separate ecosystem, its own little walled garden. It's going to play nice in the sandbox with NPM. So actually, Meteor is just now a collection of NPM modules, just like anything else. So you can use bits and pieces of it. But anyways, I think one more thing to tell you about is that because sometimes I might talk about a stack, I've also told you that because of my background, I believe in being able to hire new programmers and train them. So that might be a reason why you'd want to use Meteor. One more reason is if you're building MVPs, minimal viable products. Yes, if you're building the third iteration of something and your problem right now is scaling it, I wouldn't use Meteor. But I find that most people I talk to are coding because they're passionate, because they have an idea that they want to see become a reality. And so they're either teaching themselves coding at night so that they can do that, or maybe they're moonlighting a job, which is what I did whenever I started Poetic. And the funny thing is when I talk to them, they always ask me questions. When I get my millionth user, is this thing going to scale? Is that thing going to scale? And I said, whenever you get your millionth user, you can just go to a VC, hire a team, and you can retire. So I've started reading a lot, and I think it was Paul Graham that said you need to start to build things that don't scale. Just build the most minimal thing you need to build today to get the idea to work. So one of the things at Poetic is we started working with a lot of startups, and we've become MVP builders. We go in, we build a minimal viable product. They can take that to get their funding. So it's a way to get the stuff off the ground very quickly. So, all right. So I'm going to run through a little bit about this. So we ended up adopting it, and since we've adopted it, it feels a lot more Rails-like in the fact that it's got a whole ecosystem built in. You have your data layer. You've got a view layer, which we use React. You can choose to use any view layer. And the main thing about Meteor that's amazing is that you have one code base for both your client and your server. But you also have one code base for your web app and your phone app. And you also have one code base for your web app, your phone app, your Android app, your iOS app. It's all one thing. So when you talk about how quickly can we get a minimal viable product out the door, there is no way to get it out the door faster, I think today, a modern web app, than using this. Yeah, sure.
You said 4 minutes ago when you said if you're building an MVP, don't use it.
If I said that, yeah. So if you've already built your MVP and you're like, great, now I need to beef it up and add a bunch of scalability to it, you're beyond Meteor at that point. If you're at the beginning and you need to get something out in a month, but something ambitious, like not a hello world, but I want to build a clone of Slack in a month, this is the thing to use. I want to build a Trello clone in a month. One of the greatest Trello clones out there is actually built in Meteor because it's like the perfect use case for using this product. As we get into 1.3 and 1.4 versions of Meteor, it's going to be a lot easier to choose backends and choose pieces to scale. Right now, there is a hard dependency on Mongo. And secondly, it keeps a WebSocket open for every single connection. Every single person using the app has an active WebSocket. It'll scale. It'll cost you a lot of money to scale it, though, because of how many active connections you'll have back open. The good news, though, in 1.3 is you could start swapping pieces of it out. And so, yes, and the beta of it dropped this weekend. You guys can try that out and check out those pieces. So, Meteor, 100%. Well, a lot of this stuff's going to be like, you guys already know this stuff, so I might go through this kind of quickly. Let's just go on to the next one. So one of the big things, you can build ambitious apps quickly with a small team. It comes with a command line tool, its own command line tool. So if you pop it open, you can type in Meteor create in your app name. Boom, you've got an app. One thing I like about it, even more than particularly even Rails, is that the Meteor new command doesn't generate a whole ton of code into your code base that you're then modifying. It actually comes with like 3 blank files. But so there's a way to wrap and package things into these things called smart packages that can add code, can add functionality in your database without adding any code into your database. So it stays very clean. You can use any view layer you want. One really amazing thing about this is how many people in here have tried to build an app that works without an internet connection or that works with a crappy internet connection? Because if you have, you know that it's extremely hard to pull off. You're looking at caching engines, you're looking at all this kind of stuff. One great thing about Meteor is, and this is part of the Mongo dependency, is that it runs Mongo on the server, but it also runs Mongo on your client. They made a complete implementation of Mongo itself, written 100% in JavaScript, They called it Mini Mongo. And what happens is when your app boots up Mongo on your client, which could be an iPhone client, Android client, or your browser, it actually just goes to the server, grabs the data that it needs to perform its operations, sucks those across to your local client, and then all the code that you write to get stuff out of the database just pulls it out of your browser's database, which means if you lose your internet connection, your app still fully works, including creating records, associating records, deleting records, all of that stuff still works. And then when your internet connection comes back in, it shoots all the stuff back across the wire. That is probably the single reason why we started using Meteor in the first place. We were trying to write an app that would work in the middle of nowhere, and it was the only thing where record associations and everything worked completely offline and would synchronize later. It's got its own package system at Atmosphere.js, but that's getting replaced with NPM in the next release. And then it has a build system called ISOBuild, which allows all the code that you write to, so you have one code base, and it will actually get compiled out both into your app and into your server automatically, so you can actually be all the way down to one code base. Yeah, here's reasons why you should. Let me hit allow on this thing to go away. Okay, so reasons. This is a web slide. Yeah. So this is a part of Meteor slide deck. If you guys ever want to look through it later. Other things about this, Meteor, if you change something in the database, it shoots the data across the wire and also updates the UI immediately. So you got anybody in here use Trello? You know how you can drag the cards across and immediately on everybody's screens the card drags across, or if you're on Slack and you're typing a message, everybody gets the message all at the same time. You'd have to write a lot of code for this. In Meteor, without writing it or doing anything extra, you get all of this behavior automatically. So clients aren't wondering, well, on my file system, whenever I drag something out of this folder, if anybody else is on that same shared folder, they also see the file disappear. So how come in your app am I clicking things and then I have another browser open over here and I don't see those things also happening? Well, we all know as web developers, of course, you have to refresh the page. Come on, man, that was generated in PHP on the server. You should have known that that doesn't come across. Are you like, you don't know how the internet works? Well, with Meteor, that is actually how it works out of the box automatically, which is what this is all about, updates without refreshing the browser, real-time collaboration. So this is a quote from one of the guys who was helping build Trello when they asked, you know, how did you guys make it real-time? And he says, we bled all over it. Basically, it's a mess. They couldn't, you know, but if they would have used an underlying technology that was built to do this, it would have been a lot easier. So what they had to do in order to make all this magic work, although you don't have to worry about it, is build a stack that looks like this. So whenever you hit Meteor create and then type Meteor and hit enter, it spins up Mongo, so you don't have to have Mongo installed on your computer. It's built in. You don't have to worry about Mongo on the client. You don't have to worry about any of this stuff. It actually builds a stack that looks just like this with DDP in the middle. For sake of time, I'm not going to spend the time to go through it. Just believe me that it works. And I am going to show you a demo of an app that we've built on top of this so you can see how some of it works. This is the better graph here. So what happens is if I click something or I do something in this interface, what's going to happen is it's only going to do that action. So if I delete a record, it's going to delete the record on the client. So on this device, it's going to go to the client's Mongo. It's going to delete the record. What it's then going to do is if I have any methods on those objects to do something after it gets deleted, like maybe I need to clean up some associations or add some records, it actually calls all those methods also on the client. Let's say I add a person and I have an aggregate of their first name and last name that I make into a full name property. Well, all of that stuff will actually happen in the database and resolve locally on the client, and then that UI will go on. A second later, 2 seconds later, that same command will execute the same method and the same stuff in the database over on the server, and then it resolves. So what they call that is optimistic UI. No other stack that I know of that's mature, like other than Meteor, actually has the same type of functionality. So you actually only have to write the code once. When it compiles the methods out to both your client and server. And so your whole entire app can completely exist and run only on the client, and then it resolves in the background on the server. What this allows you to do also, because the entire code base exists in JavaScript and it exists on the client, is it allows you to update your app without having to go through the App Store through hot code pushes, which is something that we do a lot of now. So when we're working on the app, we've installed a lot of analytic data into there, and the client says, hey, let's see what would happen if we change that image from this image to that image. Let's see if our conversion rate goes up. Well, if it was a native app and it was natively written and everything else, you're talking about rebuilding that binary and then submitting it to the App Store, submitting it to Apple, and waiting about 3 days to a week before they approve it, and then you can test that. With ours, we just type Meteor deploy, hit enter, it shoots the code up. When the next person opens their phone and they're using it, through that WebSocket detects that new code is available, sucks the code across the wire, prompts the user that there's an update available, they click yes, and it can hot code reload itself without going through the App Store approval update, which is pretty neat. Anyways, we can go through more of this. I'm just going to skip through it. So here's a, yeah. Yeah, they. So that's a good question. They have actually come out and said so long as you don't materially change what the app does, they're fine with it. Actually, React Native has come out with similar capability to hot code reload, and so there's a lot of people doing it. It's totally fine and totally approved. Anyways, so there's 200 Meteor groups, a lot of people that work with it. Oh, this is actually kind of important here. So it is completely MIT open source. It does have $20 million of funding behind it. This is an old slide deck, but what's actually next is Meteor 1.3, which the beta is out, which brings us to parity with NPM. And here's places you can go to learn about it. And now I'm going to actually show you a sample app. How am I doing on time? Okay. Let me see. Okay. So what I'm going to show you guys now is an app that we built called Hoopla, and it's built in Meteor. So just to show you, I didn't have a way to wait. I can AirPlay from my phone, right? Wonder if that'd be a better way to do it. AirPlay. Is it JavaScript room 2 or main room? Mirroring. Is it going to jack it from that? Yeah. Woo! Check that out. Fancy stuff. Okay. So this will be even more fun. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open up the Hoopla app so you can see that it compiled out my one code base. And I've got my little app icon here. So I'm going to tap on Hoopla. And it launches right into my app. So actually, what I'm going to do is show you guys some even more fun stuff. I'm going to go ahead and log out and show you some fun things. So first off, push notifications. It's a smart package. You add push notifications as one line. Meteor add RAIX push is the name of the package. You enter your Twilio ID, and you have push notifications, and you have everything else in your app. So you do not, it's very few lines of code to get that working, to get texting working. The package that you're about to see here for doing text-based login, which is the fun stuff that all the kids are doing in the apps these days, if you guys haven't used them, we have a package that's open source that we released for this. So it says, let's get started. Enter your phone number. Guess anybody has any questions, you can call me. It's going to be on the recording. And so it just said, we just texted a verification code to this phone number. So there we go. The code is 0675. 0675. So I click sign in. That just sent a call through the DDP layer. It generated a token, and then it verified that the tokens matched, and that has a cooldown timer. You only have a couple hours to do that. Boom, you're logged into the app. Okay, so this app that you guys are looking at is like Evite plus a Slack wall. So I've been invited to a lot of events. My wife's probably going to ask me to take out the trash and stuff on my phone here, so I apologize in advance. Something just happened with the AirPlay. Oh, here we go. Technological difficulties. Okay, here we go. So, anyways, these are all past events, but we'll go into one. But it's essentially like Evite with a Slack wall. We're throwing lots of events, but you get the Evite, it goes in your calendar, that's the end of it. You end up going to the event, and you're like, hey, can you send me those pictures that you took, or how do I find the group, or where did everybody go? I don't know, there's lots of things. So we decided to build an app where it's Evite plus a whole entire wall to keep in communication. And in fact, my dad was messing with me the other day, and actually my mom did go to the hospital, and the way that he told me that my mom was in the hospital was by inviting me to an event called Mom is at Methodist Hospital. I know, he's such a troll. And I was telling Saul's dad, my dad looks like Saul's dad, and he's also a programmer. It's the most nuts thing. So anyways, I clicked onto that event, and now I'm looking at the details. So if you guys notice, I don't know how smooth it looks like on the projector, but the screen transitions and everything look very good, look very native on the device.
They are slower.
Does it?
Airplane.
Okay. On here, it slides right across. You can like pull and slide just like you're expecting there. And you can see that it has a wall. Now this wall I've just been testing a lot of gibberish on, just because it's a fun one to play with. And it also gives you a photos wall here. So all that kind of stuff is supported. Yes, it runs inside of Cordova. That's correct. So what I want to do now is demonstrate to you guys the power of DDP. So let me open up an event here, and let me also open up an event. Okay, got to log back in. I'm gonna actually get another text on my phone. 5457. Okay. It actually might be. I think we might be pushed up a beta copy of it. We haven't told anybody about it, so if there's bugs, we're not releasing it for about 2 more weeks. Okay, so I'm logged in on the computer up here. I'm gonna this baby shower I think is actually a real event that one of the founders of this app is gonna do, so I'm not gonna use it. Okay, I'm gonna use Creative Day. Yeah. Let me see here. Refresh this. And okay. Okay, so over here on this computer, I'm logged into the app, and I'm on the wall of the Creative Day event. And I am here as well. So I'm going to put, hey, from Node.js. So, and I'm going to click send. And hey, from Node.js. So it's in real time here. So now here's what we're going to do. We are going to put my phone in airplane mode, which that's going to kill AirShare. Okay, so, all right, so here's what we'll do. We will mirror from here. JavaScript room, right?
Yeah, our
Main room. Aha, okay. So now I'm going to also put another hey from Node.js. So, and I'm going to send that to here. Now on my phone, which is in airplane mode, I'm going to put, why didn't I get your message? Now, if you'll notice, because even on Facebook, if you lose your internet connection, you can't use it anymore. But here, I'm going to go ahead and send that message. And totally worked. You can see a minute ago, hey from Node.js, and a second ago, I got why didn't I get your message? It's tiny, it's on my phone, but I promise it's there. So here's what we're going to do now. I'm going to take my phone off of airplane mode. And what's going to happen is it's going to reconnect to the network. And we should see why didn't I get your message when the database resolves. So there it goes. So when I came off airplane mode, this whole entire app would continue to work completely offline. You could be flying through the air. You could plan events on it. And what's going to happen is is all of the records, even all the associated records and everything, are going to completely insert into the mini Mongo on my phone, and it's just not going to care. All the methods that I wrote about data validation, working with those records as they get created, all of that code is just going to completely execute on this phone. What happens then is when an internet connection, just the data shot across the wire, and all of the methods around the data get re-executed on the server to verify that somebody didn't just mess with it. And then what happens is the final resolved copy on the server gets shot back across the wire in case I did something to my client. Or so the final source of truth is the server. So that's whenever you have isomorphic code, whenever you have databases running on the client and on the server and everything else, you get apps that are what they call optimistic UI, meaning the UI will continue to work. And you get apps that work offline. And you get apps that are extremely easy to develop because there's only one code base. So that's it. Let's see, I had 3 minutes. Okay, good. Yeah, what's up?
You told us you wouldn't want to use Meteor for a huge scale app. Is that right?
You could. There are.
Let's say
Yeah.
you had 1 million people using this app.
Mm-hmm.
Meteor still, or you would have had to?
So if I had 1 million people using this app, and they were all actively using it, not just 1 million users, there's physically 1 million people logged into it, there would be 1 million WebSockets open back to through the DDP connection back to the server. And you could do it. So we've actually already figured out how to build scaling into this. So it's actually RAM based, and as you build up more RAM, it'll spin up more servers, and you have a load balancer, and you have to have sticky sessions. But with a load balancer, with sticky sessions, and with something monitoring your RAM, you could build something that would scale.
Well, let's
Yeah.
say this app was successful.
Mhm.
How many people would you expect using it? And would Meteor still work without too much?
So another thing you'd want to do, the database would probably be the first thing that's going to end up crashing, because the web clusters or the web nodes could scale, just like I said. And we run the backend on MongoLab, and we run them on a sharded cluster. So you should be okay even there, but it's going to start getting very expensive. So if that started happening, you have 2 options. You can switch the app from live DDP WebSocket to long polling, and then you can set the amount of time that you want for your long polling. That's just like one setting in your Meteor settings file, so you can set it to 10 seconds of long polling. That would cut down a lot. What I would do is there's a project out there called Meteor. It's actually spelled like this. like Meteor, but Meteor. And they have completely rebuilt the stack of Meteor, but they did it all with individual node packages. The answer is, what I would probably do would be to start optimizing as much as I could, and then if that didn't work, I would start replacing the pieces. Now we have 1.3. You can freely choose to replace pieces of the stack that are being your bottleneck. So it would be possible in the future. What's up?
Same kind of question, like what's the amount of websites you have? Like what's your first problem?
Probably the amount of WebSockets open to an individual node in the cluster, which I think that whenever we tried it on Modulus, you can get about 50 active WebSocket connections to each individual node on Modulus. So I don't know, do you guys use Modulus for hosting here? So it's like Heroku for node apps. We found that Heroku per individual dyno can handle about 50 WebSockets. So if you, right.
The way that they you have a client and they say, hey, I want this data, I want to know about this data. And so it's really about how it's people. So like, you don't want to know about all of the chat, what's happening in other rooms that you're not in, right? So it's like managing that.
So once you can go to long polling, you can switch to a different database, and that fixes some of those Meteor issues.
So, okay, let's talk about this. I'm not saying that you couldn't scale an app using Meteor, but whenever you're building some really, really large scale app, you're really fine tuning things like at each individual layer. Up until 1.3, the whole stack was built together as one piece. So if a part of it didn't scale, you wouldn't have a lot of control over replacing that part. With 1.3, you will have control over all parts, and you can replace the pieces you don't want. In 1.4, which is August release, they're saying, they're completely removing the dependency on Mongo, and you can use any backend you want, and you can even mix a bunch of technologies in, because they're building what they're calling reactive GraphQL. And so what's going to end up happening is inside your code base, you're going to build code to connect to either REST or to Postgre or anything really you could connect to, and then the server will handle the reactivity between that and your client for you. So I would say if you start building an app today, there's probably not a good chance it'll be done if it's a big app you're planning on scaling by August, and at that point you'll have your complete choice over back-end technology. Yeah, I don't like their view layer. It's not good. But none of the good development companies who are using Meteor are using Blaze, which is what it's called. Pretty much everybody is using, all the good people using it are using React. One really neat thing about this, because it's completely isomorphic, is if you do make an NPM package, say you could make one that's a React component for logging in via Facebook, you could build the client and the server side of that into the one package and release it. So if I want to download Facebook auth and install it in my app, I can install one package and the whole thing is there. I don't know how to describe that because nobody else really has done that. And in fact, if you want to add auth into an app in Meteor, it's one line through the Meteor command line, Meteor add Facebook auth, enter, and then the next line is pasting a tag under your view layer and you have Facebook auth.
Question about what's happening to ISO build in 1.3 since they're going all NPM approach.
Sure.
Or is that,
It's still, they still have ISO build. I don't know if it's getting a new name or what it is. We've upgraded a bunch of our 1.2 apps to 1.3. You don't have to do anything, it just works. It just upgrades, and yeah, whenever you do the include from NPM, you specify whether or not you want that code to be imported to the client, the server, or both. I think by default it imports to both.
Last is you mentioned scaling and things like documentation.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually not customers, and so I wanted to make sure that if you WebSocket is open, like that second or something like that. So do you have 50 customers going on that second, or do you have 50 customers going on that minute? That's 60 seconds. And so I mean, those are things. So really, you could easily have a 10,000 user, base, and still not have an issue. So that's very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. While the app is open. So right now the app here, it's been closed. The socket's probably been released already.
On a second or a minute or 10 minutes, same number. It's over days or active days.
Right, so like if I go over here to the app right now, the WebSocket's open. In fact, I think you can type in meteor dot connection dot something. Anyway, it has like it has an actual object here, and you can tell whether or not you're connected or not. But guess what? Now that connection's not active. So the second that they leave, WebSocket's released, so there's now 50 in the pool. If somebody goes, there's 49 in the pool. But you could make it to where whenever you get to your 45th user, you could go ahead and tell Modulus to spin up another node, and then you've got 50 more. So now you've got 100, and you can have 150 and 200. By the time you're getting 10,000 active users using it right then, you probably have 1 million customers. And yeah, then you just go collect your paycheck from a VC and then make somebody else worry about it. What's up? Let's pull it up. We can pull up what we were just now looking at. So here's the code base for it, what we were just now working on, and it has this magic folders, which in 1.3 you can have more control over, but you have a client folder here, and you have a server folder down here. Everything that's not in client or server is particularly on both. One common thing to do is to create these folders called shared, but really everything that's not in here or in here is shared. So this collections folder compiles out to, goes isomorphically out, and this is where all of your data model goes in here. So if you write validation code, You're not like writing validation code in Ruby on Rails or writing it in Node and then over here on your client trying to find libraries and your regexes aren't regexed exactly the same, so you can, it's like some emails make it through one and don't get like it is the exact same code. So I would say I'm finding some 50% of my code is probably shared, and then the parts that aren't shared never would have been, so it's like you never would have gotten an optimization in that standpoint either way. But this is the whole code base, including everything with push notifications, including everything with text messages, the text message I received. It's all here. There's not multiple things for the person to spin up. They can clone this thing down, type in Meteor, hit enter, it npm installs all the packages, and you're off to the races. Discover, that's a good question. There's a book called Discover Meteor. And this is sort of like the pickaxe guide to Ruby on Rails. I'm going to keep making references to Ruby on Rails. This would be the equivalent to the pickaxe book or the other one. So this is the main one. The only problem with a lot of this stuff is Meteor is moving so fast that this stuff will get you up to speed with the paradigms and old Meteor code, but it's not going to have anything with 1.3 in it quite yet, and React and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Cool, so I want to be respectful of everybody's time, so thank you guys for having me, and I'll stick around for a little bit if anybody has questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man.